findings about global hunger index. It rates us in 109 out of 127 countries. Our own national nutrition survey, that it's an old value of 2018, it says 38% of population is food insecure. We have nutrient deficiencies in children under 5. And the most recent study, when I was preparing for today's talk, here in the slide of the World Bank and ADP, you can find that in Pakistan, food insecurity is 44.9, almost 50% of the population. And we are putting much into utilization of resources of water and land. There is very less limit to horizontal expansion in agriculture. We are food insecure. What the future holds in its steps for us. We see a major decline in all of the 3 or 4 major crops that I mentioned in previous slides, ranging from 3% to 34% or even 38% in some of the food crops and some of the fiber crops. Even the crop water requirements, we are using more than 90% of water in agriculture, and many of the areas which can produce agriculture but can't enter into this because of poor water availability, I mean the less water availability. And on the other hand, you can see a 10% rise in crop water requirements, and this is only for wheat crops in Punjab zone. Given this context, Pakistan submitted its second NDC way back in 2021, where we talk about different adaptation and mitigation interventions. Usually, NDCs are supposed to talk about emission reduction and mitigation. Yes, it's true in the sense of Article 2 of the Paris Agreement, where it calls about 1.5 degree temperature retaining, which is out of context now. But there are 2 other things that are aligned with Article 2. Investments in adaptation and mitigation that are highly needed for certain sectors, and for agriculture, these are highly relevant. We committed that we will reduce 50% of our 2030 projection emissions by 2030, out of which 15% will be from our own resources and 35% will be subject to international support. We committed certain targets in renewable energy, electric vehicles, moratorium on coal power plants. On an adaptation side, we talked about the Recharge Pakistan, industrialization, flood risk mitigation, enhancing the protected areas, and investing in nature-based solutions. Some of projects are in realization. If we look into the NDC, it talks about both adaptation and mitigation as well as transparency. In adaptation, we talked about high efficiency irrigation systems, drought-tolerant varieties, and climate monitoring and forecasting early warning systems. Then in mitigation, we talked about farm forestry, climate smart agriculture, reduced emissions from livestock and rice. And this intervention that ADB is doing is very much in line with the NDC 2 commitments. Then we also talked about transparency. Then also we talked about transparency issues. We are not having, despite doing many of the things in the country in agriculture sector, we are still not able to gauge where we are in terms of adaptation and mitigation. When we developed this document, then it was the realization that all the activities related to different sectors, including agriculture, will be held in the provinces. So, Ministry of Climate Change collaborated with the provinces, and they come up with the 59 priority areas for NDC 2 implementation. These are in terms of climate resilience building, adaptation, vulnerability, and climate change, But again, in these priority areas where a number of projects were identified, the projects were about climate resilient agriculture and then water resources management. So these were the two key categories that are being implemented into that those projects. Then in 2023, Pakistan developed its first ever national adaptation plan, which talks about a long-term vision for agricultural growth, and it talks about avoiding the ad hoc approach in agriculture and talks about the long-term measure for agricultural productivity, ensuring food security. It talks about modernizing surface and groundwater irrigation services to support the transition to climate smart agriculture, and it also delineates programs to promote the use of nutrition and food services. So, I mean, in the policy arena, both adaptation and mitigation are at the core of the government documents, not only at the federal level but also at the provincial level. Now I will touch upon the third aspect to which this workshop is very much relevant, is about the mitigation. If you see in this diagram, you will see that Pakistan is at number 7, perhaps 9, in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. So these emissions are not only from the production, but also from the processes and value chains that are aligned with the production processes. This is the table, and you can realize that how emissions in agriculture are on the rise. You can see in 1994 we were only having around less than 10% of emissions from agriculture sector. But if you look in the 2021, we are having 46% emissions from agriculture sector. And if unofficially, I told you, tell you about 2023-24 inventory that we have just finalized for the sake of the NDC 3 preparation, here it comes around 285 million tons of CO2 equivalent. I mean, around 49% of the emissions are from the agriculture sector. So this is the data of this inventory of 2021, which I just mentioned. Here you can realize that the emissions from rice cultivation are 12 million tons CO2 equivalent. And most of the emissions are from livestock. So these are two critical sectors, and the third one is the managed soils, where we are having emissions from excessive use of nitrogen. So these are the three areas which needs research, which needs actions, not only at the end of the policymakers and decision makers, but also at the farm level. So how the research findings can be communicated or delivered to the farming community for doing some climate interventions. In terms of fertilizer usage, we are working with the University of Agriculture, and it is said that around 50% of the nitrogen fertilizer is wasted. And if this wasted fertilizer is used effectively, it is not only the cost cutting process, but also the emission reduction process. Similarly, in terms of rice cultivation, when we were developing the MRV report with Habitats, then we were not having any specific indicators that we need to tell to the agriculture statistics of Pakistan, because they were not aware of it. At times we blame to the Bureau of Statistics that they don't provide us the data, or even to different organizations at the provincial level. But we miss the fact that at that time, these people who are at the data generation and are not actually trained for the new trends of or new tools for emission calculation. So until and unless these indicators are embedded into their data procurement system, so we are not able to get the data. So this was our first effort in the MRV setup, and we designed a set of indicators 7, 8, or 9 on which the data is now from Punjab province at least I am getting, and we are able to categorize how much area is under rice and how much area is under alternate wetting and drying and how much area is under dry sowing. So this is one of the things in the rice sector that we are getting. Besides the emissions from the production process, there are emissions from the supply chain too, either before the production process and after the production process. So since these emissions are in the from the processes, so these are calculated either in the eco-sector, industrial processes and product use, or in the energy sector. But these are part of the greenhouse gas emissions. Now we are in the process of preparation of the NDC 3, and government is pushing to submit it as early as possible. So this provides us an opportunity to be more inclusive, to provide the thoughts regarding to the work that ADB is doing in terms of emission reduction from rice, nitrogen or methane. So this can be made part of it, and we can present a reasonable case to the international community for emission reduction and its requirements in terms of funding or technology that we do need for transforming agriculture. I was in Baku and had a detailed discussion with different professionals across the world who are working on NDC document, and it was realized that we need to focus it not merely from the perspective of agriculture, rather through the angle of the food system. So in this NDC, we are looking the inputs from different development partners as well as government, federal entities, academia, civil society, with the lens of the food systems approach. The food systems approach, as I already mentioned, it not only takes into account the production processes, but also the value chain and also the nutritive value, because the ultimate goal of the agriculture is to ensure food security. So this is a paradigm shift that we are expecting in this NDC in terms of that. And then I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist working on different things, but these documents are political documents. We must recognize these things. So at the end, it's the political will that defines the tilt of a document. And that tilt may be mitigation centric, or it may be the adaptation centric. Our first NDC talked about 20% reduction in emissions. There was least discussion of adaptation. The second was again more ambitious, but there was talk about the adaptation. But over time, in the last 3 or 4 years, when we are expecting almost 3 to 4 extreme events every year, and we are facing heavy losses to our economy, especially to agriculture, we cannot close our eyes from mentioning of adaptation into the NDC. So in this NDC, we will be focusing agriculture again with the lens of providing the food security, because just a couple of minutes before I showed you a slide which says that 44.9% population is insecure. So we will be talking about climate resilient crops, improved water management, and integrated livestock management. And there will also be mention of mitigation. 2 parallel committees, one on mitigation and one on adaptation, are working. ADB is also part of both the activities. So in mitigation, we are mentioning reducing methane and nitrous oxide emissions, agroforestry and plastic sequestration, sustainable soils and water management. These are the 3 areas that you will see being reflected in the NDC3 document, which will be surfaced in the coming months. But for doing all these interventions, we require a policy support and financial support too.
These things are not implementable until and unless the new technologies, new finances, I mean high finances are there to implement it. I was just reading a study last year which said that around only 14% of our farming community have access to climate resilient techniques. And there are more than 40% of the land in Pakistan which is still unprotected from early warning systems and all sorts of farmer advisories. So this is a huge challenge that we need to do that. So these are my thoughts, and I will end my presentation saying that NDC provides us an opportunity to see a transformation in agriculture with the lens of not only building resilience but also with the perspective of reducing emissions through climate smart agriculture. Again, saying that ADB is doing a wonderful job, and I'm really happy. Not only methane but nitrogen is also on the agenda. We will try to include the methane roadmap in the NDC as well as the nitrogen roadmap into the NDC 3 governance. With this, thank you very much.